Morning. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming in this morning. This weekend always seems to get hit by storms or snow or something, so fingers crossed we've done pretty well. I've said it now, haven't I? Very pleased to welcome you all today. And so Mr. Brewer is just going to give a little introduction to the purpose of this talk this morning. And then I'm going to run through with you about what's on offer at Moreton in the fifth form. Then we invite you to go downstairs where we have teachers who are going to talk to you about how your daughter is doing in their subject, but also about what they think would be best choices for GCSE as well. So hopefully by the end of the morning, any questions you have will have been answered, but this is only the start of the process, not the end. So it's all about gathering information at this point. So we will support you all the way through. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning. Just before I do start talking about GCSEs, whilst we've got a captive audience, I've heard such lovely things about your daughters from last night's Snowflake Ball. The house mistresses were telling me what a great event it was, how wonderful they were with the younger years, really looking out for them, looking after them. And they've even told me about these two dear boys who turned up. And yes, oh God, indeed. And were made to do the Macarena. And God bless them. But thank you, ladies, for being such wonderful ambassadors for the school. It is noted and appreciated. GCSEs then. This is the beginning of a narrowing of educational pathways, which might sound like a bad thing, but it really isn't. The UK education system is effectively a triangle or a pyramid. And so it starts with as broad a base as possible. And the early years of education are about exploration, building skills, finding strengths and loves and enjoyments and all of the rest of it. But it does begin to narrow inwards because at the top of the UK education system, most of us won't achieve this, some of us, including some in this room, is a doctorate. It's a point at which you have qualified beyond all other reasonable qualifications, and certainly for a PhD, you'll have contributed new knowledge to your area of interest. So for the UK universities, what they're interested in are people who are highly specialised, who are very, very good and very interested in the things that they do and might be able to push beyond what's already known in that area. So to get to that point, you've got to start bringing those sides of the pyramid inwards. And at GCSE, it's the first time that you'll do that. And that can seem like it's going to be quite daunting because we can love lots of subjects and really not know which ones we're going to cast aside. Equally, it can seem like it's going to be really easy because I could probably put some of the girls on the spot right now and say, give me one subject you're never going to study again and you'll be delighted about. And they'd be able to name one. But one of the things that you do need to do is think just those couple of steps ahead. So giving up subjects when you don't want to can be tricky. There are some workarounds and we will discuss those with you where we can. But it is an important part of the process. However, giving up a subject that you think you don't love now, sometimes we can be a bit premature in that. And if you think forward a few steps, if there is something that you might want to really go and study at university, if you are looking to go down a medicine path, there are some things that are going to be advantageous to have studied at GCSE over other things. So that's part of what you'll understand, what you'll learn today, and why talking with teachers is a really good idea. And it's a two-way process. The teachers are going to give some appraisals today. They will suggest, actually, your daughter would be really good at this subject, so real strengths there. Or they might struggle with this because these elements don't seem to appeal to them, or they're struggling with this part of the course. And here are some things we can do about that as well. So be ready and embracing of open dialogue in that sense. But it is an exciting part of the journey too, because year 9 is a really difficult year, actually. Possibly one of the toughest years that there is in a school journey. And one of the reasons why it's difficult is actually, in lots of ways, girls, you're ready. You're probably ready for GCSEs in lots of ways, but we're not quite there with you yet. So there's a few more months of that, and that can feel a bit like a drag. So this is something where you get to do the exciting thing. You get to actually say, this is about me, my interests, what I want to take forward. And that's quite empowering. So I really hope that you enjoyed that this morning, ladies. Parents, I hope that you get all of the information you need. Please don't hesitate to have a chat with myself or with Ms. Champion at any point this morning if you want to know a little bit more about the processes or what we're doing here at school to support your daughters. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And I also would like to introduce Mrs. Ashworth to those of you who don't already know her, who is the head of careers in sixth form, who is the absolute expert in university choices, in how things have changed over the years. Mrs. Ashworth is really up to speed with all those things as well. So she's here to answer any questions about those future pathways. And whilst we're talking about girls who are in year 9, we are going to be talking about university when you're in your 20s. So this is all about the pathway through and how we want to be able to tailor that to each of your areas of interest and expertise. So I will send you this after the talk this morning. We have a booklet as well that you received on email, hopefully, and we have printed copies that we can put in-house for the girls to have a look at as well. So you'll have all this information sent to you after this morning. So I just wanted to take you through the GCSE options timeline. We start, obviously, this morning with a briefing, and then downstairs you will speak to teachers. Then in January, we are going to open up the options form on the website, and we will notify you again. And again, remind you, please ask if you've got any questions at that point. And at this point, we've got no timetabling restrictions at all on the choices that you make. And advice is available at all times. Then by the end of the spring half term, we would hope that you have got to the point where you've made decisions, and you will be asked to submit your choices by the end of that half term week. And in March, that's when I will start to create the option blocks based on the choices that have been submitted via the website. And that's where we are different to so many other schools, in that we don't have option blocks where we impose choices on you. Your choices form the creation of the option blocks. So we don't have any restrictions at that stage at all. So some of you have got, I'm sure, siblings and friends in the rest of the school, and you've heard all about it. You've seen the other girls, but for many of you, this might be a new experience of what happens in the 5th form that's different to what you've had so far. So as I've said, we create the option blocks around your choices. You will have a 5th form tutor for the 2 years during your lower 5 and upper 5 years. This is for you girls to be listening to here. So you will have a tutor who will guide you through that whole process, and that mirrors what we do in the 6th form as well, where we have a 6th form tutor for the 2 years. But we also have a senior 5th form tutor who oversees progress through those 2 years, who is Miss Rachel Dooley. Unfortunately can't be with us this morning, who has succumbed to the lurgy that is doing the rounds, as I'm sure you're all aware. And within the 5th form, it's not just about GCSEs. You know this school well enough. We're not just about the academics. It's about everything else that goes on around that as well, which makes the people you see around you the people they are. So opportunities to do things other than what's on the timetable. So some of you are already doing CCF, I know, but there are further opportunities for that. Duke of Edinburgh's, we have the Silver Award on offer in the lower 5th, moving into the Gold Award, bronze in the lower 5th, and then the Gold in the 6th form as well. Senior School Show, I hope you've all enjoyed that this week. Upper 4, you're about to start the Middle School Show again, your final year where you have to do it, but in the senior years you don't have to do it, but we encourage you to if you're interested, so you will have the opportunity to take part in that wonderful production you've just seen. And we have Cambridge English examination classes for all EAL learners, and that is in preparation for the IELTS qualification that our overseas learners need to get into university as well. So many opportunities. Now, this might seem a bit odd, why are we putting this on? This got changed several years ago. But for most of us in this room, we will have done the letter system, and we now have a number system. The reasons they brought in the number system was to try to distinguish at the top end. They had so many students who were doing so well at A-star, they decided to make it even harder to get those top grades by separating out the A and the A-star to the 7, 8 and 9. But you can see on that the 7 and 8 and 9 are equivalent to A's and A-stars in the old letter system. So they are really good grades to get, and that's where we aim for with all our students. So over the years at Moreton, the results have are varied always, every single year, because we have a whole variety of different students in. But we always get asked, what are the results like? In that question, though, there are other, it's this thing turning around. There are other matters that we need to consider. So in August 2022, I'll bring us back to pandemic. This was the first set of exams post-pandemic, and all students were given advanced information. That means that they were told which topics would be on the papers, and therefore they knew what they had to revise and also what they didn't have to revise. So they were given an advantage to take into account that their education had been severely disrupted. So if you look at grades from 2022, you might think, wow, they did really well. Well, yes, they did, but that was because they knew what was coming up on the exams. Then in 23, we were told that there would be some grade protection for the GCSE and A-level students as well. And what happened was that they took the grade boundaries back to 2019, and it became quite hard for them to get those higher grades. And these are students who'd still had disruption to their education. So 23 was a disappointing year for so many students and schools. We were promised one thing and they delivered another. So it was quite tough on those candidates across the whole country. This is not just us. But in August 24, everything returned to pre-pandemic conditions, and the trajectory that we were on before the pandemic was put back in place. Post-reform of GCSEs, in other words, when they changed the letter system to the number system, we were back on that trajectory then. So I hope that gives you some context when you're looking at GCSE results over the years. There are other things that need to be taken into account. So talking about our headlines from this summer just gone, we had a 98% pass rate, which was 1.5 times higher than the national average, which was extraordinary for our candidates. We are a non-selective school, but our girls do really well. Only 11 didn't achieve at least 1, 9 or 8 in their GCSEs. And if you remember from that diagram, that is an A or an A star in the old system. So we had a 100% pass rate in separate sciences. That's been in the headlines recently. You may have seen, we'll talk you through the separate science situation in a few minutes. 100% of pupils achieved grades 9 to 8 in drama. Mr. Jenkins was disappointed with the 8s, let's put it there, but they're still A's and A stars. And what we talk about at Moreton, because we are a non-selective school, is the value that is added. So what you might expect a student to achieve in one school, we will help them achieve higher at Moreton. This is what we call our value added. And it is always consistently positive, and it's always greater than expectations. And that's where we really see the measure of the school. Because we're non-selective, our girls do better than they would elsewhere, which is something to really take home. So GCSE subjects, you will meet teachers downstairs you haven't met before, and you will be introduced to some subjects that are new. Girls, please, you need to go and speak to these subject leaders as well. So we've got Business GCSE, and Mrs. Ashworth over there is Head of Business, and Mrs. Booth also teaches business. It's a very popular subject at GCSE. It's very new to you, but it's so topical and relevant, and so applicable to so many courses at university as well. We also have GCSE PE. Now, I know you all do games and PE out on the cross and Astro, but this time you get to study it and learn more about the systems, the body systems as well. Okay, let's talk about some of the FAQs. Now, I'm sure you've got some questions here. These are the questions that have come up over the years, and we've tried to put them all together, these answers that people, to the questions they normally ask. The question, first of all, is what is a good pass? So the definition of a good pass at GCSE is 5, grade 5. But grade 4 is still a pass. Anything below 4, unfortunately, is not a pass, but you could get grade 3, 2 and 1. Okay? The minimum entry requirement for most UK universities is grade 4 for English and maths. So that's what we're looking for. Minimum requirement is a grade 4 in those subjects. Some universities want the grade 5 or 6, though. It depends on what the course is in GCSE maths, and Mrs. Ashworth will be able to give some more guidance on which kind of courses would maybe be looking for those. But say, for example, psychology, science A-levels, business courses will be looking for that grade 5 in maths as well. And what we want to talk about really today is about future-proofing yourself and aiming for the highest grade in GCSE maths. And that is especially if you're not considering maths as an A-level subject, you still need to try to get the highest grade possible in maths. And the foundations that we put in place from the very early years are all aiming towards getting that grade 5 for all of our candidates. So the thing we need to talk about as well today is in the tier system that we have in maths and in science. The first tier to think about is the foundation and higher maths tier. And very often girls and parents might say, well, she's going to do higher. But then we would recommend maybe they do foundation, which would secure that grade 5. Much more easily, greater chance of securing a grade 5 in foundation than there is in higher. So whilst people see the word, hear the word foundation and think, oh, it doesn't sound like it's very good, it doesn't look very good. When you get that GCSE certificate, it doesn't say foundation or higher, it just says the grade. And if you just need that grade 5, it doesn't matter whether you've done foundation. So it's not a dirty word, is what I'm trying to say. Foundation is a really good route to help secure that grade 5 at GCSE. So we do recommend it. Another question that frequently comes up is how many GCSEs should my daughter take? Well, when the GCSEs got changed, back when they changed the letters to numbers, they also made a lot of them a lot harder. That means you need more time on them. And therefore, we're not talking anymore about the quantity of GCSEs, we're talking about quality. In other words, we're looking for the best grades, those higher grades, 9s and 8s, in fewer subjects than historically most students sort of 10, 15 years ago took. So universities are looking for those top grades. They are not looking for the number of GCSEs. And Mrs. Ashworth will be able to explain a bit more about that. So in most cases, 9 GCSEs will give pupils the best possibility of achieving those highest grades. In 2025 and 24, nationally, the average was 8. That's what most candidates took. Some do less, some do more. But I can't emphasize how important that message is, that quality counts. When it comes to future university courses, we're not talking about the numbers of GCSEs, we're talking about the highest grades in fewer GCSEs than historically has been the case. And we want to encourage breadth in the curriculum. We are not an academic hothouse for good reason, because well-rounded individuals, happy individuals, achieve the best outcome, the best grades, and are still happy by the time they've got through that GCSE experience, because they continue to do subjects and they continue to do extracurricular activities that they really enjoy. And that's what we're aiming for here. So, MFL, Modern Foreign Languages, to those of you who don't know what that means. Should my daughter take an MFL subject? Now, you may have heard about the EBAC. There used to be a question we get asked quite a bit. Some of you may have done the EBAC. EBAC used to encourage everyone to take a language. We encourage everyone to take a language anyway. We don't follow the EBAC metric, but we would love students to take languages. Having that diversity, that cultural experience is so valuable. So we would always encourage a student to look at a language. Some girls want to go down this route of taking languages, and we try to facilitate as many as we possibly can fit in. We've got some who are doing French, Spanish, Chinese. We will try and do that for you. Some girls don't want to take languages at all, and we don't force anyone to either. So if that's in the back of your mind, do I have to do a language? No, you don't have to do a language, but if you want to, you can. And you can do more than one. And again, we need to speak to Mrs. Ashworth after this if you're really not sure about those choices of subjects. What we always want students to do, though, is study things they enjoy. Because most of the time, if you enjoy them, it means you're quite good at them as well. And that means you're going to get a really good grade at the end of it. So enjoying your subject and being good at it are the two things we really look for when you're trying to make those choices. Now, some of the subjects you've never experienced before, which is why we hope this morning will be the start of finding out, am I going to enjoy this? Am I going to be any good at it? So we can start looking at those other subjects this morning. So I changed this morning because it did say my eldest daughter took 11. Now, I don't think that would be anyone in this room because the changes happened so many years ago, but relatives will have taken 11. But my daughter will only achieve 9. Will this affect her chances of getting into a good university? Is always the question we get asked. The answer is no. Universities were in the process of reforming the GCSEs. They are fully aware of what the changes were, and they are not looking for 11 GCSEs. They're looking for the highest grades in fewer GCSEs. So please don't worry that not taking 11 is going to mean you're not going to get into a decent university. It's just not true. Each application, Mrs. Ashworth has had an ordeal over the last month or so with our lower six who've been upper six now, putting in their university applications. We start the process off with the lower six in the new year, and every single application is bespoke. Every single application takes hours of guidance to make sure the girls are applying for courses that they will get into, they've got the grades for, and they're going to enjoy. So each offer will take all the context of their experience into account as well. And the offers are now flooding in, which is lovely for those girls after all their hard work. So, as I keep saying, the most competitive universities, we're talking about Russell Group, Oxford and Cambridge, they are looking for the highest grades, not 11, 12, 13 GCSEs, the best grades. They want 7, 8, 9 in grade 9. 5 even at grade 9 would be enough for some universities as well. So it's not about the number of GCSEs. So I said I'd come back to this. This is science, the separates versus combined. This has been in the press recently because there's been a government review of the curriculum, and what the government now want to do is to allow more students access to separate sciences. At the moment, the majority of state-maintained schools don't offer separate science. We do offer separate science. We also offer combined science. And you probably don't know there are two different routes. Then we're going to throw in higher and foundation for the combined science as well. So there are several levels when it comes to science at GCSE. So the separate versus combined, they are very similar. Separates means that you end up with 3 GCSEs, biology, physics, chemistry. Combined means you end up with 2 GCSEs, but you still study biology, physics, and chemistry. What it basically means is that combined covers a third less content over the 3 sciences compared to separate sciences. So separate science courses are quite fast-paced because they've got to cover a lot of content. We get it covered in the 2 years, but it is for those students who are confident in science to take that route. Taking combined science doesn't mean that you can't take a science at A-level, though. It just means it might have to catch up on the third of the content that you haven't done at GCSE. And we have students who come in at A-level from other schools who've only taken combined and successfully go on to take A-levels in chemistry, biology, physics, and successfully go on to study those sciences at university as well. So taking combined science does not mean you can't study science at A-level or university. You have the same number of exams, so you've still got to do those exams in physics, chemistry, and biology, the same as the separates if you do combined. It's just that the combined exams are shorter because there's a third less content. And as I said, many schools only offer combined science. The government now wants that to be offered, separate science to be offered to more places. So normally the percentages for combined, 70 to 75% of students at GCSE take combined. It's only 25 to 30% who take the separates. And our entries reflect those statistics as well. And we start streaming, and what that means is whether you do combined or whether you do separates, at the start of lower 5. We advise that if you're not sure, then maybe you start with separates And you can drop back down to combined if it's not working, if the pace is too high or too quick, or you don't feel confident in it. What we don't advise is that you start with combined and move up to separates during that lower 5th year, because you're going to have to catch up. There will be a lot of content to catch up. So if you're not sure, we advise separates, drop down. We don't advise you think a combined to move up to separates. I hope that all makes sense. Good, okay. Yes?
Can you do, if you do separates, can you do 2 out of 3? So let's say you didn't like biology, not do biology, but do chemistry and physics.
We have had a few candidates who do that in the past. The only thing I would say is that when you're looking at university entrance, they might say, well, you did separates in biology and chemistry, why didn't you do it in physics? When you're being compared to other students who do take separate sciences, applying for the same courses, and they've done physics, it just sort of sets that other candidate aside. Why? What was wrong with physics? Why couldn't you cope with physics? Might be the question. So we don't recommend it, but we have facilitated that. But it's always with that advice that it may limit the opportunities later down the line. And that's what we're trying to do now, is make sure that no doors are closed through choices that are made when these girls are only in year 9. Okay. The other streaming, when we're talking about higher and foundation, this is only for combined science. That streaming will take place from the start of upper 5. And again, it means that you can get those 5s in those subjects. If you're taking combined, it's harder to get the 5s in those subjects if you're doing the higher. So again, it's a conversation with teachers at the time as to what's the best route for each student. And just to give you an illustration there of the proportions. We've got a similar scenario in maths, but it's only talking about higher and foundation. And again, it's that magic number, grade 5, that you can get with foundation a lot more easily than you can in higher. So those are the proportions of candidates who take foundation and higher. You can see that foundation nationally is the most popular route. They are almost 2 separate subjects, so we don't recommend switching between them because the content is different. In foundation, you've got more broader, touchable maths, whereas at higher, it's complex, challenging and abstract. Higher maths prepares you for A-level maths. Foundation maths is not good preparation for A-level maths. And that really is a sort of caveat to take away. If you are interested in A-level maths and you're good at maths, go for higher. If you just got to get that grade 5 and you're not going to take A-level maths, then go for foundation. As I said, you don't have the word foundation or higher on the GCSE certificate, you just have the grade. Confidence is key. If you're not confident in maths, think carefully about that higher foundation route. And the streaming for a higher or foundation will start at lower 5 because they are virtually 2 separate subjects taught in different lessons. Okay, I hope that's helped, but obviously if you've got any questions, we can answer those.
Sorry, can I ask what touchable maths meant?
Most people can do it. More in reach, more in touch with compared to the sort of higher, which the concepts there. I remember a student who was studying maths at Oxford looked at the first GCSE paper higher, and she couldn't believe that it was practically an A-level maths paper. So that's not really in reach for most people. It's not touchable. So talking about university choices, Mrs. Ashworth is the expert in the room on these. There are some factors to take into account here. These higher aspiring university courses, Oxford, Cambridge and medicine, dentistry, Russell groups are all looking at the quality, those higher grades, and not the amount of GCSEs. There are only a few subject-based requirements for courses in any university, and these are normally the medical-based, and they're looking for A-level chemistry as really is the most important of the sciences, not necessarily biology. It's A-level chemistry because it's the hardest. If you can do well in A-level chemistry, that's the kind of medic we want in hospitals and surgeries. So you would You need to seek advice, though, if you are thinking about your A-level choices. And I know we're talking about A-levels now. I said we're in year 9, and now I'm talking about universities. But the choices you make at GCSE may affect the choices that are open to you at A-level as well. So medical courses will want to see separate sciences. It's not going to prevent you from getting into medicine if you haven't got separate sciences, though, because if you can do A-level chemistry then and do well in it, you will have a strong application. So Mr. Brewer mentioned at the beginning that there are some things that you take into account with GCSE and A-level subjects. A-level options that depend on prior study of the subject. In other words, you need to have studied a subject at GCSE to be able to do well in it at A-level. English, maths, biology, chemistry, physics, obviously, but also languages, French, Spanish and Latin. It's really hard to pick it up at A-level if you haven't done a GCSE in it. So if you want to do it at A-level, you need to do it at GCSE. Beneficiary subjects. So it would be good, but you don't have to. And those include art, business, geography, history, music, RS, and theatre studies. We have got students in the sixth form studying some of those subjects who didn't study it at GCSE. It doesn't mean they can't. It just means they're a little bit behind some of their peers, and they may have to do some catching up on some of the fundamentals that are covered at GCSE. So it makes it a little bit harder for you, but if you really want to do it, then we will support you in those A-level choices. Standalone A-levels where you don't get prior GCSE knowledge in them, class civ, economics, history of art, psychology, photography, textiles. Those are new at A-level. But we have now started a GCSE in class civ as well to support that because it was a popular choice for so many students. So to summarise, really, GCSEs have become harder, but Moreton, we still get really, really good results. Core subjects have been given greater prominence. What that means in the timetable is that they have more hours than they ever used to have because they are so important to get those grade 5s in those subjects. That means we've had to reduce the number of optional subjects, but that is because of the changes brought in to the GCSE system several years ago now. We still nurture breadth of curriculum. You see it all around you everywhere you walk in Moreton. Breadth and curriculum is there in front of your eyes. The choices you make at GCSE should reflect what you enjoy, what you're good at. And it's you who's going to sit down and have to put the hours into these subjects, the preps, the exams. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to do it. So choose things that you enjoy, girls, okay? And the ones hopefully you're also good at will be in that list. And we are talking about higher grades instead of the number of subjects. And there are so many other opportunities to you in the fifth form that you haven't experienced so far at Moreton. It's the same story for the sixth form. It's like entering a different school every time you go into the fifth form or into the sixth form. Your life changes again, but you're still in the safety of Moreton Hall. And these are some contact details if you want any information about some of these subjects, and also my contact details and Mrs. Ashworth's and her colleague Mrs. Matthews, who works with her in careers. So that about brings my bit to a conclusion, and this is where, please, if you have any questions, any other questions, please just ask, and I will do my best with the help of Mrs. Ashworth. Yes?
Just back on the maths and the higher and the foundation, if you wanted to do, let's say, business for A-level,
Yeah.
would you recommend a higher maths versus a foundation?
The experts in the room.
A pass at GCSE maths is perfectly ample for the business A-level. That's all we need.
Yes?
Are there different thresholds for grades in GCSE as well as A-level? Like, are there some easier to get a sort of 8 or a 9 or...
Or in the subject, you mean?
Yes.
Well, it depends on what students are interested in as to how easy it is. It's very individual, those experiences. The core subjects, obviously, you've got to take them. But there are some subjects where there's coursework, what we used to call coursework. We call it NEAs now. So in food, preparation, nutrition, there is 2 elements of coursework. PE, we've got coursework. geography, there's some coursework, fieldwork to do as well. So those subjects allow students to walk into the exam hall having banked marks already, credit towards the GCSE. So you might argue that those are maybe a little bit easier in some ways, but for some candidates that's a struggle, keeping on top of the work, continually working as opposed to exams all at the end. So it really does depend on the individual, but those subjects do offer those. It used to be a lot more subjects had coursework, including English at GCSE, but that has been minimised now, so there's only a few left that have that.
So we don't have like history, it's a 70% for a 9, or for maths it's 60% for a 8, or
Grade boundaries change every single year, and when you get reports with grades on them next year, even then we've got the caveat at the bottom is that the grade boundaries will change. What we say might be a 7 now could be a 6 when your daughter takes her exams. There are variations, and when you look at exam results and percentages, you think, oh, how does that make sense? Different exam boards have different numbers as well, different percentages for different grades. So unfortunately, that is really throwing a dart at the dartboard. I can't give you that definitive guide because there's so many factors that change what it looks like when it actually the results come out, I'm afraid. Not very helpful, I'm sure. But yes?
With maths, if you did foundation, is there a limit to the grade you can get?
You can only get maximum grade 5, but it's a lot easier to get grade 5 in foundation than it is to get it at higher. Even though it's the same subject, somebody who might get, say, grade 5 at foundation would be more likely to get grade 3 in higher, and that's not a pass, which is why we encourage students who are not confident in maths to take foundation, because it gives them that greater chance of getting that good pass, which will open so many doors for them. We have candidates who have to retake, and we always advise. Unfortunately, it's normally when candidates don't listen to advice that things don't go well. And so we really recommend that people take the advice of their teachers and we give them as a school to help them get that good pass. Okay.
Can I just say as well?
Yes.
I think when the government introduced these new grades, they called 5 a good pass because they assumed that universities would all ask for a 5. But actually that didn't happen. Universities just all asked for a 4, apart from in a few cases. So actually the 4 is the benchmark for a pass. So there are very few cases where students actually are required to have anything above that for university. But some psychology, some business courses at some of the more competitive universities, but generally a 4 is all that's required.
Is that the same with the science, the foundation and the higher, the combined? So if you take the foundation combined science, you could get a maximum of 10.
Yes, you would get 5/5. So it comes out on the certificate as a 5-5, we call it a unified grade. Whereas if you take separates, you would get a grade for biology, physics and chemistry. So it would come out combined science 5/5. Any other questions? I'm sure when you start talking to teachers and each other and chat about it, you will have many more questions. So as I say, this is just the start of those conversations. So please, if anything comes to mind, contact details are there. As I said, I'll send this to you next week. And you have the booklet with all the information in as well. So I think it's probably time to stretch legs and to make your way downstairs, have a coffee, take one with you if you'd like, take a pastry and go and speak to subject teachers and have a chat about things. I'm afraid the lurgy has meant some people haven't made it in this morning. I'm really sorry about that, but I don't want you catching it by forcing teachers in if they're not well.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.